All right, welcome to the first episode of the 2KSO podcast. Sorry, it's been a few weeks since we really got up and going. Been taking our time, being sure we're doing this right for you guys. So, now with all that said, we'll hop right into it. This week, there were a lot of big changes in the league because the server was pretty dry most of the time. No one really talked. I mean, there were a good one or two people talking. Dylan talked. There was Ben. I guess Ben's not this. Bryce, not Ben. My apologies. Not a lot of active players in the server. Sam was on there occasionally, but we made the decision to change the Me 6 levels to what we call badge points. So now when players upgrade and talk more, they will get better in 2K to translate that to promote that active behavior. Now, server's been a lot more fun as far as I've seen in the past few days. I've enjoyed it a lot more. The fact that people ended up enjoyed it a lot more. Dylan, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was an amazing idea. The server's definitely been more active, and it also makes it more fun in the game. Like getting badges.
Definitely, I think it's gonna make the games more dynamic and exciting. Just there's gonna be a lot deeper threes being shot when people start upgrading range extender. Sniper will see a lot more flashy moves, quick first step. We'll get a lot of quicker blow by dunks. So I think it'll
Yeah,
definitely increase the excitement of the games as well. But it'll be the people who really care about the server that are gonna be getting those type of abilities. So that's the thing. And then the thing is the reason I'm big on saying that word overall inflation. I know if you've talked to me about increases in overall or doing any idea, that word has probably came out of my mouth multiple times, probably too many times, because I don't want to end up in a league where you've got every starter's 90 plus overall because that really gets a little silly.
yeah, I agree.
When you get into like 2K and even ours, the overalls are a little higher just to keep action a little more fun, and a little more unreal. Because part of these servers is going to be a little unrealistic. That's part of the fun aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah,
So we kept it around a good angle though, to where there's one, two 90 overalls a team. It's very well balanced, I think, so far. So I didn't want to
yeah,
mess that up. I figured out these Hall of Fame badges. It takes 5 or 6 to bump your overall once. And as these levels increase, the Hall of Fame badges are gonna start. They're gonna be there for the best, but they're not a lot of people are gonna have them. Or have
yeah.
plenty.
It's gonna be interesting.
Definitely not gonna be something that is gonna be crazy. Is gonna cause crazy inflation. And I'm willing to give the active people an overall bumper to in exchange for the activity we're receiving right now. That's something I'm willing to make a fair trade on.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty fair.
with that being said, we can move on now. Just wanted to give a snippet on that because it was big news this week. Probably one of the biggest things we've added to the server since we began. We can go ahead and start week 2. A lot of crazy games, 5 games, and there were some huge performances. I feel there were like 3 guys this week that probably could have won player of the week last week. All 3 of the nominees this week probably would have won it last week, which I think was crazy.
Yeah,
We had 26 points was the high last week, and we had 2 players on one team break that one game in the Kodiaks, Dylan and Chance, and then all 3 team captains broke it. Had 29, 30, and 30 was the scoring for them. Just crazy stats this week. Absolutely lit it up. It was really fun to watch. One of the
yeah, it
game,
was.
one of the games where people were lighting it up. Leading scorer for this game, David De La Cruz, captain for the Pittsburgh Force, is here on the podcast with us now, actually. So we can bring in David. Say hi to the whole podcast fam.
Yo, what up?
David finished the game with, pretty sure, about 18, 5 and 10 possibly. It was
Yeah.
18, 20 in that range. Solid stats. Couldn't pull out the win, but they played a solid team, and he played fairly well. What were your thoughts coming into the first game of the season for the Force? What were your expectations, hopes? What did you want out of that?
Well, obviously, I wanted to win. We couldn't really take it, but I think the team played well for not really having a defense.
Definitely,
So
yeah. And you guys did, you forced the ball out of their best players' hands really well on defense, which is something when you play against Shaun Randall, Chase Poseidon, even Kyler Bemis at this point, you really have to force the ball out of those centers' hands because in a one-on-one, those are guys you don't want to score, and you guys did that very well, even for a poor defensive team. The scoring became more balanced because of it, but you didn't get 30 bombed by Chase Poseidon or Brayton Jones. You guys, there was 5 people I think with 10 plus points, but if you get beat by 10 plus from their whole starting 5, that's where you got to tip your hat, say good game, and move on to next week.
yeah, kind of hurt watching it, but
Definitely,
it was,
especially first game of the season. Loss has got to be tough to stomach, but there were some things to like about it.
yeah.
Yeah. What are your
Just
plans for the Force?
Right now, I'm trying to rebuild more into a balanced team than shooting,
Yeah.
but it's going downhill right now.
do you feel the addition of Cam Stacy on the defensive end is going to be one that's going to help you guys turn some things around defensively, or you think that's going to be more of a trade asset later on?
Uh, a little bit of both, because there's not really telling what a player could really do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
I think
um,
I think you just need to find your second guy. That's what you guys are lacking. Defensively, you can find a few defensive role players, but you need, that second option. You see a lot of the great teams. I consider the Kodiaks, that 1-2 punch, Chance, Dylan. They're gonna go in there. One of them is gonna be lighting it up. You can't stop. It's hard to stop 2 players. You can stop one guy. Hard to stop 2. Chase Poseidon, when teams shut him down, Brayton Jones goes for 30. When teams try and shut Boston Coran down, Bemis and Lloyd probably go for 30. All the best teams right now that you're seeing play, they all have that number 2 that can go for 30 if you don't focus on them just as much as you do the star. And that's what I think that you guys really need right now.
Yeah.
but my team ain't really that good right now, so no one's really willing to trade.
Oh yeah. Do you what are your plans for the future trade wise? Do you think that you think you'll settle down on the trades, or do you really want to make some moves to try and compete for to win in the play in this year?
I want to compete uh, as much. I'm trying to trade as best I could.
Definitely, yeah. Did it hurt when you saw JJ? You had to see JJ and Azir Hicks go today. Was that
Yeah,
difficult for you to get rid of?
it took what 30 minutes for me to finally agree.
Definitely, yeah. And a lot of peer pressure involved in general.
Yeah, but then once I made the move, they started complaining about the team, so I was really confused.
Yeah, I could tell you got JJ JJ's road with the Force was a wild one. A lot of
Yeah,
things happened. He went from first round pick, was traded back, now traded again. He's had a lot of ups and downs, but I could tell you wanted JJ on the team for sure.
I'm just hoping for
So
the best for those two.
yeah. How do you feel about Devon Martin? You acquiring him?
I think they'll do great for this team. It could really help.
Yeah.
I got my
Who?
second offensive player, and uh, pretty much,
Yeah.
and another good shooter, which is gonna be pretty good for the team. Maybe pretty bad.
Yeah. Good offensively.
Yeah, poorly on defense.
There's been a lot of question here though. You guys have, and now I mean I think your problem solved. You have Devon Martin. what is your plan as far as you guys' big situation? Because you have, Brody Gee 76, Logan Zertzman 75. You've got Devon Martin's gonna have to play the four, but do you see, Brody Gee and Logan Zertzman having a battle for the starting five spot, or do you think that what are your plans there? Because that big rotation is one that we've seen people question and think who's going to be their guy because there's very different players there. Brody Gee's defensive, Zertzman's a stretch, step out and shoot the three ball really well.
Well, right now I can't decide on which one's gonna be my starter, so I might have them battle it on that court.
Definitely.
Which will be the hard part since I'm also focusing on the rest of the team. See what I need to improve on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, lots to look forward to. Brody Gee, Logan Zertzman, center battle. Zertzman's definitely, I think, the bigger player for sure. But Brody Gee's got the defensive edge you're looking for. But Zertzman's three ball, can really space the floor as big as he is. So,
It's
lot to look forward to for this Force team. David, thank you for stopping by. Really means a lot. You stopped by, and all first captains players in the 2KSL in general. Every week we're gonna try and have a segment just like this with a captain, with a player, anyone going through some sort of situation. Possibly could be looking for a Grayson Spillers interview next week. Stay tuned. A lot to be excited for. So definitely hit the DMs if you're interested in being on the podcast. We're always looking for some exciting topics, things to keep you guys engaged. So hit the DMs. David, thank you for stopping by. Any last messages?
I'm going to the playoffs. I don't care what anyone says.
Hell yeah. All right. So heard it there first. Force are gunning for a playoff spot, top playoff spot.
Yeah. What he
You know,
said.
with the game recaps, we look at those. We started with that first Force game, but if you go and look at some of the box scores, like I said, crazy boom of a week. There was a lot happening. Chance Murphy, 30 points. Brayton Jones, 30 points. And even those players that had 30 were having 10 in another category. Dylan, you finished with 25, 5, and 11. There was a lot of high scoring performances this game we didn't see in week one. We saw it from, the Knights, but no other team really scored the ball very well. And
Yeah.
then Moose this week came out and looked like a completely different team. They played you guys and the Kodiaks first, Dylan. So that was obviously a very tough game for you guys because
Yeah.
you
It was.
Chance played a hell of a game, and Shaun Randall looking like the MVP front runner, 29 and 25, absolutely
Yeah.
absurd.
Shaun Randall, he is tough to stop down there.
Definitely, and there was a point in time where really you guys weren't doing bad at it. He hit takeover late in the second, I think, and it was you guys' second team in, I believe. But he touched the ball every time, and you guys dug down and guard. And I think you gave up a three at one point, but I'm giving up a 3-pointer once or twice to dig the ball out of Shaun Randall's hands. As a second captain, if you're playing the Moose in the future, you've got to look to dig the ball out because that has been seen to be the most effective there. If you do not dig the ball out and you don't have a 90-plus team captain center, or maybe, there's teams with a 89 center or 80s, high 80, you have to have a high 80s on him. In this game, he had a high 80s rim protector and with 30 points
Yeah.
with 25
Yeah.
rebounds. He's hard to stop. You have to do something, Definitely going to be chasing Boston Coran for that MVP frontrunner. One of the two are going to try and take it.
Yeah, I agree.
But big shout out to Brayton Jones and Chance Murphy. Really, really great weeks, and they both probably would have been player of the week last week. So it really sucks to see, a week where you got somebody like Shaun Randall that goes in and absolutely takes the game over when
Yeah.
you're just playing so amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Moose this week, everything has been, on, off, up and down. Shaun, who is here with us on the podcast now as well. How do you feel about that? The Moose this week. Your success, the team's success, turning around from a 30-point blowout in week 1 from the Knights to beating two really solid teams this week. Or one. It's probably one of my apologies.
You know, big shout out to performance, all my team's performance. You know, it's hard to beat when one player is like me, of course, where I have 20 points a game, 20 rebounds, like that will impact the game in some sort. And it showed both times. And great role players like Princeton Bangs and Trace Mickey and everyone else in the starting five and the bench, they just work their heart out and can't be much prouder as a first captain. So
Definitely. Definitely so. As we've been talking about the game recaps, top performers and whatnot, player of the week this week. I mean, Shaun's got player of the week. If you look at the voting now, 15-3-3 right now. Shaun has it on lock. Will be reported tomorrow. Shaun is the official player of the week. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm not weary of a 12 vote comeback right now, but I think I think that still the other two players played amazing. And Chance, like he said, 30 points and 13 rebounds from a guard's unheard of.
Yeah.
Really great. But now, these haven't been released yet for week 2. They will be released tomorrow during the day at some point. Award races for week 1 were put out last week. 6th Man of the Year, Most Improved, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP. I'm going to see some big shifts in that next week because, Chase Poseidon was at 4. Will probably fall out of the top 5 now because, this week he played 2 games, had a lackluster scoring performance in both. Really had to, they won, but Brayton Jones had to go for 30 points to get that win. He had a really great, the Sonics look like they have the best bench in the league right now. Best surrounding cast. In the games that he lost this week, not lost, the games they won this week, he was not in the top 5 scorers for their team. Believe it or not, Brayton Jones had 30, 11, 6, 1, and 3. Holder had 19, 5, and 3, 1 steal, 1 block. Busby off the bench had 14, 4, 1, and 1. Garth Moss, their 5th starter, their kind of role player guy, 10, 2, and 3. Rylaw off the bench, 9 and 5. So they had, 2 guys off the bench scoring nearly 10 points. He had his second man in Brayton Jones scoring 30. Holder, his 3rd guy, going for 19. Even when he has a lackluster performance, people step up and win games. That's how.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why.
definitely. Yeah, that's what you want in a team. You want them. If your star is having a down game, you want the surrounding people to, do their thing and bring out the win.
Definitely. And when you have a team that can do that's when you have something special. There's been the Knights, they looked really good still when Boston Coran had 14 points in the first game. Some people don't talk about. He had an off game. What you want to force as a team, you want the other team's captain to have an off game. And when you force that and you still lose by as big of a margin as both those games resulted in, you really got to sit back and be like, okay, how good are these guys, When you get beat
Yeah.
by their 2nd and 3rd players, 4th and 5th guys down, people coming off the bench are outscoring some of your best guys, you got to look back at yourself and think, what do we need to change and how are they doing what they do?
Yeah, and those teams that have players come off the bench that score more than some of the stars on other teams, those are the contenders.
Oh, absolutely. That's sometimes my worry for the Jets is that, they really, when Devontae Willis wasn't firing in that first half, they looked awful. They couldn't get a shot up. They just looked terrible. They need definitely, I don't know who the second captain is there. They need a playbook change for one. For two, a team like that with as many scores as they have and as many assets they have the highest average overall in the league right now. But it might possibly be the Knights now. They've made a lot of moves since we first did that. That was beginning of season. So it's probably the Knights now, but they have, one of the highest overall rankings in the league, like average, including bench. They're deep. They're really deep for as star-studded as their starting lineup is. And still, when Devontae wasn't firing, it was 20 points at halftime. But then, Devontae caught fire and had about 20 in the second half. And then once he hit that stride, the team hit the stride. The team looked great, and they came back and won that game. And that's one thing that scares me, because if you're relying on one player to not have an off game, really when you get into the playoffs and you've got to win 3 straight against 3 different teams, you got to really hope there's no off games there, because the teams you're going to be playing at that point, you can't afford an off game. But with all that said, talking about teams, who does what, we can talk about power rankings now. So, Dylan, what are your thoughts on power rankings this week for week 3?
For week 3, I have the Knights at 1 because I love how much depth they have and all the stars on one team. Like they're a super. Like they gotta be the super team.
Absolutely.
I have the Jets at 2. They are the highest overall team, and if another player can step up and not rely on Devontae to fire, then they can be dangerous.
Absolutely, yes. That's one thing for me, about the Jets. Once I see that, the Jets really I'm going to be a huge fan of. I think, it was their first game. There's going to be some things happen. Got to be get a playbook figured out. A lot of intangibles there in that first game that you can't control. You got to watch your team play, figure out the playbook and all that. I want to see more from Manravid, 88 shooting guard. Alex Mahone, 84-point guard. Want to see more out of him. Cam Brown needs to do more. He shot a lot of dumb shots that game, and he's a rebounder, so he didn't make a lot either. They didn't look really good out of that. And I really want to see that whole team fire for me to be very convinced that they're going to be a team that can take down the Knights. So we'll see this week.
Yeah, we will. But I like your point.
Definitely, yeah. What do you have at number 3?
At number 3, I have the Barons. I like what they have in Sam Reese. A good dominant big. I think bigs definitely impact the game a lot, and that's really what you want on your team.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at 4, I have the Kodiaks. Because I feel like the Moose, the Moose is a good team. They have Shaun Randall, 29 points, 25 boards, and they only lost by 6. They came back from being down 19 points to losing by 6. And yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one thing, you got to look at with the Kodiaks game. The Kodiaks were down 20 at one point. They brought it back to 1 point, and their subs came in. The rotation was a little iffy that game, just the default rotation. All 5 subs came in late in the third as soon as the 1 point game happened. They didn't play bad. It was a 3-point game until John Harden hit 2 contested threes with 30 seconds left. Crazy from him. You hadn't seen that from him all year, not even in that game. And he just came and knocked those 2 down that really set the tone for the fourth and kind of made it a really hard deficit to come back from. But to battle back from that far, lose by 6 points with Shaun Randall having 29 and 5 gives me big hope for the Kodiaks in their future. They're going to be a great team. The 1-2 punch and Dylan White and Chance Murphy they have at the 1 and 2 there. They're like almost equal I don't know how to really even phrase what they are. It's really weird if you watch them play, because Chance, he's going to score. He's the offensive there, but he's a solid perimeter defender. He's going to score. He's going to drain in threes left and right if you give him the opportunity. If you don't run him off the line, he's going to score 30 on threes. And, Dylan's like his counterpart. It's like he's a lockdown defender, but just like Chance is, solid shooter, solid offensive player, caught an alley-oop with his head at the rim. You know,
Yeah, that was sick. Yeah.
it was crazy. You know, that was definitely one of my plays of the year so far.
Oh
And
yeah, for
so,
sure.
that was that. The whole team there looks really, really good right now, and the loss sucks. But like I said earlier about the Force, sometimes you got to tip your hat. You know, things happen. 29 and 25 is what it takes to beat by 6. Sometimes you got to say, you know what, we played a solid game. We almost
Yeah.
came back from that.
Yeah.
What do you got up next after the Kodiaks there?
All right. After the Kodiaks, I have the Moose. Um, Shaun Randall, he's just amazing. Like, you really got to you got to double team him to stop him, And he has very solid players around him to support him, and they're just a good overall team.
Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. And at 6, I have the Sharks. They kind of disappointed me. I can't lie.
Definitely, yeah.
Um, so for your power rankings, who do you have at 1?
You know, I think this should be everyone in the league's consensus one at this point. The Knights are the best team in the league. They have possibly the best player in the league. You know, Shaun's got to be in the conference. There's a lot of conversation there, but they have possibly the best player in the league, one of the best benches in the league, and the most star-heavy starting lineup in the league. They have everything you could possibly want in a team. And so they're, a team that I'm not gonna not have it one until somebody shows me under otherwise. Even if they lose to the Jets this week, I'd have a not hard time not keeping them at 1. That's how I feel about this team right now because they are that good. Someone's really gonna have to show me not only they can beat the Knights, that they are better than the Knights in general. Because it's
Yeah,
upsets can happen, and I really am gonna just have to see that you are the better team.
yeah. I just can't wait to see Knights versus Jets.
Absolutely gonna be a great game. My number 2 here though, I have the Moose at 2 right now. As of right now, completely next week, watching the Barons play, fully think that there's a chance the Barons could slide in at the 2 spot because the Barons look really nice. But I don't have a team that hasn't played yet in my top 3. I really wanted to put them at 2, but we haven't seen them play. And so you can look at teams on pen and paper, like the Lowriders, for example. Pen and paper, they don't look bad. But their captain,
Yeah,
their former captain until his early retirement midseason, you know, he was putting up 6 points a game. You never would have predicted that. Never would have
yeah,
predicted that. Solid, but this guy was scoring 6 points a game. Really makes it difficult to kind of follow and score there. So until I see them live in action play, I'm not going to make any assumptions. I'm just going to keep them at the 4 spot. I think they're probably the second best team in the league. I'm keeping them at the 4 spot for now, and I've got the Moose and Jets at 2 and 3. The Moose came out and looked like a completely different team this week than they did in week 1 against the Knights. And I know it's really hard to put a team at 2 that lost by to the best team by 30, but they really
yeah,
looked bad game as a whole team. Besides really Shaun Randall, they looked bad as a whole. But Shaun, and so I think this week they got themselves back into it. The whole team played better for the most part. Princeton Bang stepped up, which is what I really wanted to see in week 1. Still waiting for Ricky Blake to do some more. Offensively, hasn't really been a consistent shooter. But I think
yeah,
definitely the Moose are going to be my 2 for now. Jets at 3. I've talked about the Jets enough already. I'll kind of blow by that real quick. Like
yeah,
I said, want to see more people step up besides Devontae because you're going to have days when Devontae doesn't play well sometimes. People try to change their defensive settings and lock him up. Going to be a tough night for them.
yeah. It will be.
5, got the Kodiaks. Kodiaks are a team that I could put higher on this list. We've talked enough about them. Best 1-2 punch in the league at the point guard spot. They do it all on both ends. Great defensively, great offensively. Team that can beat anybody in the league. I'm confident of it. With single elimination going into the playoffs, the Kodiaks are a championship contender in my mind, fully.
Yeah, I
This is
agree.
I'm gonna stay away from this the 9-10. That's 9-10 is lowriders. Of course, I think the lowriders could be, possibly a really good team. Not really good. That might be an overstatement. I think they could be a six seed team. They could come out as a 3 seed on their conference.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think this because they've had 5 players score in 10 plus, and their captain's not been one of them.
yeah, they've
That's
been doing that without a captain. Like they just need someone to step up and be a captain, and they could really be good. They just need a captain.
exactly. And I think now with Brody Dinkelberg stepping in there as the Lowriders' new captain after Aiden James retired, I think Brody is going to be exactly what they need to get this team, get that kickstart. Like they need someone to lead the team. Even when Ballas had 20, Chance Cran looked good, had 13, 9, and 7. I think Aiden had 14 that game, but once again, you shouldn't have your backup point guard beating you, and he was down 1 in points. He scored 1 less in points, but was only down in rebounds by a few. I can check box on that real quick and double check here, but he was being beat in stat categories by his backup point guard.
Yeah, and that's definitely not what you want.
Definitely not. It's really kind of I want to say sad. It's a little harsh to say that, but you shouldn't be getting beat like that by him. 13 points compared to 15, 7 rebounds compared to 10. Like that's
Yeah,
not as a center, that's a 96 overall. He has a 18 overall gap there, I might add. That's not something you want to see. 2 points and 3 rebound differential between your backup point guard, and Chance has played great. Don't get me wrong, he's probably played one of the best backups in the league so far. Obviously Scotty Turner was up there. Prince James was up there last week until now. And every week there's going to be someone random off the Sonics bench that does that. That's what I've determined, that they don't really have a set 6-man. It's just whoever they throw in just goes nuts.
yeah,
Anyone on their bench can do that now, and we've seen it in all the games they've played. But they need Brody. Brody's going to have to step up and be that captain they didn't have before, and they can be a solid team. But
yeah.
this
I agree.
I find the interesting part, because the back 4 teams here, there's gonna be 4 teams that are in a play-in. The way it'll work, in the playoffs will be on one side of the conference, the 1 seed will play the winner of the 4 and 5 game, and the 2 and 3 will play. And same thing on the other side. So there's gonna be 4 total teams set back into this play-in tournament. So I'm interested in seeing who this back 4 is gonna be, because the 1 and 2 right now looking like the Lowriders and Forest. I don't know if the Lowriders can recover enough now after being 0 and 3 to come back and make a run out of that spot when they've got a few really good teams ahead of them. But
Yeah,
I think they're a scary team to play there. They're not a team that I would want to play in a game if Brody starts heating up and they start looking better. Because if you have Ballas giving you 20, your backup point guard and Chance Curran, getting 15 and 8 some games, that's that's a recipe for success right there.
yeah. It is. They have a lot to look up. They have a lot. They have a bright future if Brody can be that captain that they always needed.
Exactly. But what I'm really interested in this is the 7, 8, 6, 7, and 8 spot. Sharks, Sonics, and Lowriders. I mean, not Lowriders, Neptunes right now. Those 3 teams, to me, are interchangeable in that spot. I think the top 5 teams have kind of set themselves aside from that. They've shown they're, a little better than them. Your Knights, Moose, Jets, Barons, and Kodiaks are your top 5. I don't see those guys coming out into the playing game, and if they do, that's not good for whoever they're playing against. But the Sharks, Sonics, and Neptunes are very interesting teams, all 3 of them, and they're going to be the ones competing. One of those teams is going to be out of the play-in.
Yeah, and
Sonics,
it's gonna be
Neptunes,
very interesting to see.
definitely, it's going to be an interesting battle there. Because the Sonics have, in my opinion, looked like one of those top 5 teams, but when you go look at who they played against, they've lost to the Sharks. which is a team that I would have not expected them to lose to. And honestly, the Sharks have been underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah.
The only team I think they've beat so far is the Lowriders in the Force. They've beat the two worst teams in the league,
Yeah.
and they haven't done much else. Haven't seen them again.
Yeah. So
That's
hopefully the Sharks can, um, prove us what we thought about them at first.
absolutely because they were the ranked the 3 team at first. It was Jets, Knights, Sharks. That was the big 3, and now the Sharks are looking just to not be in the playing games. To come and be a 2 or 3 seed and compete, try and go to that conference finals. But I think the
Yeah.
Sonics, definitely the way they've looked, even though they've beat bad teams, I think they've looked solid all around. I think, their benches look solid. Their 2 and 3 guys have been 2 of the best in the league. They've looked the best out of the 3 teams, but when you look at who they played against, that really nullifies that resume because they lost to the Sharks. It's really offsetting because they've played better than the Sharks, but somehow lost to them. And I know Kenyon Cobb had 18 in the fourth when they lost. It's really hard to beat a team when a dude goes nuts like that in the fourth quarter the way he did. But regardless, they lost, and so it's really hard to gauge that whole area. It's blurry. The Neptunes have only played 1 game. The other 2 have been inconsistent. It's just a weird area that I'm really excited to watch play out.
Yeah. Totally.
So next week, now that we've talked about every team and their respective abilities, we can look towards the game of the week, which I think is really going to be the next week is a loaded week. And also take these games with a grain of salt. So me being an idiot, I left the house and wrote down the first letter of all the teams, not thinking that some of these teams share a letter. And so some of these games are gonna be, right now I know for a fact the top 2 are right, and I think Jets Kodiaks is right, but Kodiak Sonics, Neptune Sonics are both on there now. And I think that it's gonna be one of those games is gonna be the Sharks. I'm not sure, but it's an S, and there's Sonics and Sharks are the 2 S teams.
Yeah. It's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah. So we'll have Knights versus Jets will be first game. The battle of the 1 and 2, in most people's opinion. Really excited for that because if the Jets pull off a win here, that's huge for them to show who they are as a team. And if the Knights get the win here, this is where it kind of can show the Jets team as a whole. It's going to be crazy to watch Devontae Willis and Boston Coran in a one-on-one situation. The
Yeah.
2
It'll
best.
definitely. Yeah. It'll definitely show where they rank.
Definitely. Shaun, what do you have as far as game of the week this week? And one game this week out of Knights, Jets, Force Lowriders, Kodiaks versus Sonics, Jets versus Kodiaks, Neptunes versus Sonics. And keep in mind, Neptune Sonics could be Neptune Sharks, Kodiak Sonics could be Kodiak Sharks. Either one could flip flop.
Yeah, well, I share the same game of the week with you, honestly. Jets Knights, it will show if the Jets are going to be a great playoff team in their conference, if they can make the finals, if they can make the championship. If they don't, well, could lower them down in the power rankings, for sure.
Definitely, I fully agree with that. That the idea that this is a really defining week for the Jets because if you go in here and get 30 bombed by the Knights, it's like really hard to put you up there. That's just a difficult thing to do, to put a team up there that just got 30 bombs. So the Moose were so low previously, but then they redeemed themselves. But it's hard for me to put a team up there that gets beat by the team that way. And I've done it with the Moose, but I feel like they've earned that spot and they've earned that respect from me. But another game to be interested in, the 9 and 10 battle, Force Lowriders. The new look Force and the new look Lowriders. After Aiden James retired, Brody Dinkelberg taking over as the team captain, and the Force just traded away JJ and Azir, like we talked about earlier. David's best friends. Is David going out for blood today? Brody trying to prove himself to his teammates, get that first win. One of these teams is going to walk away with their first win of the season. That's a
Yeah,
guaranteed fact.
it's definitely going to be something to look forward to.
Absolutely. I think it will really see the new look of both teams and see what if they're really the not a team, because the lowriders, they've lost a lot of games, but we could see, if they go and blow the force out, we could see, hold up, these guys might be something to be scared of in a playing game.
Yeah.
That's not, if they get things together, then that's not a team that I really would be like, oh great, we're playing the lowriders in the play, and that's not something I would look forward to if they put things together. But if they do put things together, none of these teams besides the Force are going to be a team that I really want to play if the Force can't put it together.
Yeah, but if the Force can pull off the win against the Lowriders, it'll definitely change my perspective of the Force,
Absolutely, mine too. You're gonna have to see the off-brand Splash Brothers, Cam Stacy and Devon Martin, are gonna have to have like they did the second Kodiak's game. That's who was traded, for those who don't know, for Azir Hicks and JJ Carr. Cam Stacy and Devon Martin, who shot a combined 2 for 17 from 3 in the first game, and then came back and shot like 4 for 6 or something. Like, it was like really, they shot a really high percentage the second game. Both played great defense. It was really weird. It was super inconsistent. And so if you
Yeah,
get the second game version of them, then that's really good for the Force. If you don't, then I don't know how things are gonna look.
yeah, it could go either way.
Definitely could go either way. I think next week is really gonna be an interesting week because there's such a versatile area of games.
Yeah, a bunch of these
Yeah.
games are going to be make or break games for most of the teams. So whichever teams
Definitely.
stand out could cement themselves as one of the top teams.
Definitely could do that. And if we look at this, then there's they have a team battle between two of the top teams. They have a battle between two of the lowest teams, and then the next 3 games, like Jets Kodiaks, is one that I'm really looking forward to as well, because this is, like I said, the Kodiaks, like just same thing as the Jets Knights. The Kodiaks can prove themselves here and really show that, hey, we're one of those top teams in the league. You're gonna have to watch out for. We're a championship contender. And Neptune Sonics and Kodiaks Sonics, and Kodiaks also. Both those games for the Kodiaks are huge because they're on the fringe right there. They're like the 5th team that you say in that, maybe. Moose could be if they don't keep up this hot streak. But, they're kind of on the fringe right there in my mind. It's like we're a top team, but, like they could get knocked down by the Sonics in a loss. If Sonics beat them, the Sonics could slide up into that top 5. If they are playing 2 defining games, because if they win both of these, then they really assert themselves as a top 5 team, and they'll probably be higher than top 5 in the power rankings at that point.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
Neptune Sonics determines who's going to go ahead and set themselves backwards in the pack. Because if you lose a game to one of those conference teams, if it's Neptune Sonics, the Sonics, that is a must win for them, because then they would have lost to both of the teams they're trying to compete for to get out of the play, and they've lost to the Sharks already. So the Neptunes has to be a must win to go 1-1 in those teams that you're going to need to beat to be out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
Lot to look forward to next week in the future of the 2KSL. Really exciting. A lot of great players playing next week. Player of the week discussion is going to be awesome. Next podcast is going to be one to really look forward to. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in, helping out. Big shout out to David, Dylan, and Shaun for being here today. Everybody should be looking forward to the future of the 2KSL. We've got nothing but great things ahead of us.
Yeah.
Nothing but excitements in my mind here. Big thank you for anyone who listened. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. This is Dylan, Shaun, Brady,
Let's
all
go
signing
Kodiaks.
off.
Go Moose.
Peace out, guys. Thanks for tuning in.